Hello everybody, welcome back.
My name is Icrix, and he's Kanagusis, and I don't know what we're doing here. I think I have short-term memory loss.
Oh, shut up, will you? Okay.
Kanagusis is telling me we did a test earlier, but I don't remember no test. What's going on? Why are we doing this?
I played the test to you just 2 minutes ago. Anyways.
Well, if you say so. So what's going on here now?
As I was about to before you kept interrupting me, for fuck's sake. So, we are fighting Armenia. I believe this is outside of Kyzikis.
Kyzikis.
I think. But it's a provincial capital, and the garrison has sallied out, which is kind of how I prefer to do things in DEI.
It has sally forth and tally hoed.
Yes. So, we have arrayed our forces in the typical manner that I do. Our pikes in the front, silver shields towards the right, bronze shields towards the left. We have on the flanks our Thoreo spears and Galatian spears, and then we have our melee infantry, generally a mix of Thoreo swords and the Galatian swords. We have our cavalry wings.
Along with our Styrian elephants?
Yes.
Yes. Ah, I knew I'd get it right.
So we have our attire in the game as usual. We have, I think, our citizen cavalry. Royal PELTASTS over there.
Okie
We have our
dokie.
scythe chariots in this army.
Oh, we're not going with the ones that have the spikes on each end?
They are the ones with spikes on each end. They're the scythe chariots.
Oh, I didn't see any. I didn't see any spikes. I mean, I saw the chariots, but I didn't see any spikes.
But they're the only chariots the Seleucids have, are the scythe chariots.
No, I didn't see any spikes.
Just because it didn't seem to me they weren't there. It was only just for a split second anyways.
Oh, okay then.
So our cavalry is defeating the Armenian cavalry there.
They're making a decent effort there, and our Syrian elephants are on the move.
Yep.
So, any new updates for Warhammer recently?
Well, I would say the community's kind of been freaking out because there's been no news.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well, they're just anxiously waiting for news in Thrones of Decay, which, yeah, we just need to see what's going on with Thrones of Decay. So, there's been no news really, other than there were some more layoffs for Creative Assembly.
Ouch.
Yeah.
But the whole video game industry is facing layoffs. You got Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Santa Monica, and
So
Telltale.
the whole tech industry's kind of been suffering, especially because of the whole COVID boom.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it didn't
Oh, it's
seem
more or
to-
less because of Sony. They're more like sunk of costs, fallacy of sunk costs kind of guys.
I suppose none of them are. But anyways, onto other matters that we can be a little more qualified to talk about. This. So yeah, we're holding the enemy off pretty well, of course, as to be expected.
Yeah, our phalanx formation is pretty sturdy.
Of course. We have our infantry engaging. The chariots really took some losses, I think.
Our infantry is holding up pretty well, I'd say.
Yeah, our Royal PELTASTS are doing pretty good. Yeah, I remember Cam was asked about where did they get the Royal PELTASTS, like what was the historical basis with the Royal PELTASTS, and he wasn't too sure. My interpretation is that probably the silver shields. So
Why do you think the silver shields?
this is largely from reading Duplessis, but basically the silver shields weren't just pikemen. They had a few different functions depending on what was needed. But in a basic sense, they could also serve as tactical, kind of like flexible assault infantry, which, you know, who would probably still used their kind of small peltai type shields, but probably fought more with swords and javelins, which sounds a bit like the Royal PELTAST. So that's the gist of it, really, at least from what I remember. So that was my interpretation, like, that must be where they got the whole Royal PELTAST Seleucids from.
Has anyone offered up any counter arguments to support that claim or argue against it, or what?
Not really. Again, it's my interpretation based on what I've understood about the Silver Shields and all that with Duplessis, so that was, that works for me. But Cam just said he didn't really know for sure. He didn't remember where they got the idea from. Maybe some reference somewhere.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, one of the other options could be like that he just made it up as he went along. Honestly, it could just as easily be
DEI
that.
kind of tries to be fairly kind of authentic and accurate, if you will, when it comes to rosters. They generally try to have it be like there'd be some kind of a basis for it. They usually, and I emphasize usually, aren't eager to make things out of whole cloth. Like, yeah, there are some things that are kind of made up with different real bases, like Celtic two-handed swordsman. You know.
Sure, if that's the case, it kind of makes you wonder why he doesn't open up about the inspiration he got.
It's just,
I mean,
think the thing is, it's more of a case of they were made years and years back, so he just doesn't really remember what the basis was.
I guess there's that.
You know. Well, the Seleucids haven't had any major roster changes in some time.
Well, obviously not.
Like, the most recent is only now, and that's just updating a few things, like letting them have unique looking Terreo swords, making the Syrian elephants an actual part of the roster, and changing the Royal PELTAST into melee skirmishers. That's like the gist of it now. And maybe some visual tweaks they've done in the past, but they haven't done anything really substantive to the roster in quite a long time. Because they haven't needed to, it's fine as it is for the most part.
Of course.
There's a lot that they've chosen not to include. You know. Because it'd be like
it'd be too time consuming, honestly.
It'd just be kind of redundant a lot of the times.
Time consuming for a redundant matter.
Kind of, just because it'd be a lot of units that they could include theoretically that, like, do the exact same thing as other units already have. And that just bloat the roster a lot more. So they just don't.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I suppose it's
plus,
not worth the effort.
you could cover a lot of that through the AOR mercenary stuff, so yeah. Like, Thracians fought with the Seleucids, so what would, you'd probably just get some sort of Thracian unit. Not really worth making a unique unit for their roster out of. There's already Thracian units you can recruit locally.
I'll need to get more Thracian on us.
Because the only Thracian units in the Seleucids are just the Gallo-Thracian cavalry, but they did have Thracian infantry, at least I think attested in some battles. I think, like, Raphia. I think they were tested at Raphia. I don't really... It's been a while since I've read Raphia. The Polybius account at Raphia. But yeah, like, they had Thracians and Galatians, and then, like, Arabian camels, camel archers, and a lot of, like, Illyrian or Thracian archers and slingers or whatever. Stuff like that, which isn't really important. They're not like they're that unique about them. It's just, oh yeah, these guys from these groups fought as slingers or something. Not really worth highlighting. Or mailed Galatian cavalry, which was attested in Appian's account of Magnesia. You know, stuff like that. So there's a lot they don't include just because it'd be pointless, but otherwise, yeah. Anyway, so the battle is going well. We're pushing back the enemy, and yes, for the most part, but it's a pretty messy front.
Yeah, I see your phalanx formation has fallen apart.
It's kind of been broken up. So it's pretty tough enough fight, in fairness. A bit chaotic. But we're putting through where the enemy is breaking up on one side, so we can start moving those troops around.
Oh, and here come our Syrian elephants now, hoping to turn the tides of battle into our favors.
Yeah. Assisting our Galatians.
Oh, making short work of them now.
Yeah, it's reminding me of when the Galatians were initially causing trouble for the Seleucids. They were apparently beaten at a battle known as the Battle of the Elephants. Though we don't have any
do
details.
tell.
We don't have any details of it. We just know it happened. Well, it's said to have happened.
How can they claim to have happened if there's no account of it?
Because we just don't have any detailed accounts, but I guess presumably the elephants were a big factor in it. What we do have is a terracotta figurine that depicts what looks like an elephant trampling what's probably some sort of Celtic warrior.
And what? That's the only source that's available?
It's just one source that shows something interesting. But ultimately, there's not a lot known about it to say. I can't really comment much on the details, and I don't think there is many details. Just I think it's known vaguely that there was a battle that seemed to have largely beaten back this kind of Galatian onslaught.
I mean, it sounds a little bit skeptical to me
put it
because
like this. What's so strange about a battle where elephants were used? The Seleucids used elephants, and Galatians would not have been entirely familiar with elephants. Therefore, were probably beaten with that as a major factor.
I suppose.
Not a stretch.
I guess, but the fact that you only have these, shall we say, terracotta figurines and no sort of.
Well, again, the problem with written sources, there may have been a written account of it, but that's just lost.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
Because even
I mean, it would make sense back then to have all those written accounts lost to the nether regions or ether or whatever. I don't know which term to use, but the fact that we only have these terracotta figurines right now to make any sort of claim.
That we are reliant on whatever was copied. See, when the way ancient sources come to us is through the act of copying and copying and copying and copying and copying, and then we get lucky and find maybe a medieval copy. That's how it works. So there's a huge swathe of ancient sources that are just lost. And even I talk about the Battle of Magnesia, we don't have Polybius' account of it. That's lost.
Okay.
And he would probably be our earliest source, or one of our earliest sources for that battle. We have Livy and Appian's accounts. They're writing quite a bit later. I think the Celtic invasion of Greece, I was reading that account by Pausanias. I don't remember, I'm not sure exactly when he's writing, but even just I remember when I initially read his account, he made reference to Roman emperors. I'm like, this guy's writing much later than the events he's talking about. The website, which had the translations, said that his source might have been Hieronymus of Cardia, but that's speculation, I don't know. But that's the thing, sometimes all you have is maybe a really late account of something. Even the story of Rome's early clashes with the Gauls, the Senones, and the sack of Rome and all that narrative. We only really get that thing from Livy, who's writing centuries after all this happened.
Okay, then.
So, like, I suppose the thing is ultimately, that's the thing. The nature of this is ancient sources are going to be lost, and we're not always going to be able to find them today.
Yeah, I accept that.
So,
honestly.
It's not... And I think the Seleucids already have a bit of a problem, where I think written sources about them are pretty sparse at times.
They like to keep... They were a bunch that like to keep to themselves, or they just
I don't know
didn't...
so much about that, it's just that whatever ancient sources wrote about them, we don't always have their accounts. So there's patchy records. You know, like, we know, for example, Seleucus the First took on another wife, but we don't know, did he take on a second wife while still married to Apama, or did Apama die?
The bravery of men, not words, is all that is between us now.
It kind of makes you wonder where your man got all this information in the first place, if, like, there's not an awful lot of sources to begin with. Like, where did he get all this information about the Seleucids? Like, what kind of sources did he glean from? It kind of makes you wonder.
Polybius? Or who are you talking about now?
Sorry?
Who are you talking about now?
Oh, like, your man who came up with the information, who came up with, like, all the inspiration for some of the stuff that we're seeing here.
Cam?
Yeah.
Well, we may have patchy evidence, but we still have evidence on things, and we can make do with what we can. Not really in the position here to talk about all the evidence with the Seleucid military that's in DEI. That perhaps could be a video of its own that I've considered doing. Some of it is we know roughly how Hellenistic armies fought, like the Emperors and Pikes. And the silver shields have been attested in various sources, like notably Polybius' account of the Battle of Raphia. He specifically mentions the silver shields. We also have the Daphne Parade, which mentions not only the silver shields, but the bronze shields. Scythe chariots are mentioned as far as even Seleucus the First's reign, or the time of Seleucus the First. War elephants are attested in several battles, the Asian elephants. Again, Raphia is a notable example. We know they had multi-ethnic style armies, and Galatians were a part of it. They're mentioned at Raphia, they're mentioned in Magnesia, they're mentioned at the Daphne Parade. We have terracotta figurines that are thought to show Galatians, that we've shown before with the muscled cuirass and the large shield and the possible face masks. Cataphracts are attested in accounts such as the Battle of Panion by Polybius, the Battle of Magnesia. So we know they had cataphracts, and they're generally thought to be Hellenic cataphracts. And then we have the bronze statuette, which shows a cataphract, and we have the Pergamene balustrade of Athena Nikephoros, which we've shown on a previous video, which showcased some form of equipment. Whilst the Recolour are probably not explicitly mentioned by name, they almost certainly would have been a part of Hellenistic warfare of the later stages by the 3rd century. And they probably were vaguely referenced as maybe some of the Greek mercenaries that attacked Ptolemaic PELTASTS at Raphia. Seleukidai are kind of mentioned as some mail-clad infantry. The silver shield swordsmen that we have yet to see in the game, but we will see, are basically attested, and these guys I wrote my master's thesis on, but suffice to say, the silver shield swordsmen are basically taken from Polybius' account of the Daphne Parade, where he mentions 5,000 mail-clad infantrymen in Roman fashion who led the military procession. We have a terracotta figurine, undated, Hellenistic terracotta figurine that's missing its head, that shows some sort of mail-clad infantryman or some sort of mail-clad soldier with a possible Tereos or oval-style shield and a sword, I think, sheathed to his right. Now, I should caveat, a review of Nick Secunda, one of these reviews of Nick Secunda's Hellenistic Infantry Reforms book, did point out that it bore resemblance to a terracotta figurine of a Gaul that was in a British museum, and I could trace one that was in the Ashmolean Museum, and it is similar, though there are some possible slight differences, but still, that is something important to caveat. That's just with the Seleucids, you know. We know, so what DEI does is, some of it is inferences and just going, well, we can make some inferences based on general trends. Other things are more firmly attested in one way or another, be it written sources or material evidence. So, you know, that's the gist of it in that sense. But the Ptolemies, you're probably looking at a similar thing of various levels of material evidence, inferences, speculation, and written accounts. We know they used war elephants, mainly African elephants. I've talked before, I think it was probably in our last session recording, about Agatharchides of Cnidus and his mentioning of what we could call quilted cataphracts. Doesn't call them anything like that, but he does talk about Greek horsemen that were wearing kind of like quilted or felted armor. They were covered head to toe with only their eyes exposed, and the mounts were similarly covered. So, you know, again, being a Hellenistic kingdom, they had a pike phalanx. That's mentioned also at something like the Battle of Raphia, which is a big part of how they won. They did have a kind of a cavalry guard squadron like the Seleucids did. Seleukid Hittite were in the game are attested, and we know Alexander had an entire regiment. Again, the case of Seleucids, another cavalry unit that, again, we have yet to see here, the Politikoi, were mentioned at the battle, not the battle, but they were mentioned at the Daphne Parade, by Polybius' account of the Daphne Parade. So, suffice to say that typically, especially with DEI, they do tend to have reasonable grounding for most units, especially for the likes of the Seleucids or the Ptolemies. Some are more speculation heavy to an extent, like I would say Massalia's roster, because remember Cam said we know virtually nothing about Massalia's military. But you can make some inferences based on the fact that they're a Greek state and they're located in Gaul. So you can make some inferences. Also, I think Bactria is kind of another case of speculation for the most part. Not a lot of evidence. We know there's probably cataphracts. I think in Icanoum they found what looked like evidence of cataphract armor. And Icanoum, I think, is thought to be within the realms of Greco-Bactria. There's a terracotta figurine found in Camber Tepe, which is also thought to be around the Greco-Bactria area, and that shows some sort of thoracites. An infantryman with a short, leaf-bladed sword, an oval Tereo-style shield, some kind of a cuirass. It's pretty flat-looking, but I remember the article that talks about, the paper that talked about this figurine, I think it was by Nikonov, I don't remember the name, I have it on my PC, but suggested it might be a muscled cuirass. So, you know, stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm thinking, being kind of a breakaway state from the Seleucids, they might have had a pike phalanx, and they probably had access to Indian elephants, because they would have been close to Asia and India. So, as I say, ordinarily there's a reasonable grounding for what DEI does most of the time. You know, it's not normally made out of whole cloth. There is some reasonable evidence there. Sometimes specific interpretation is just that interpretation, their own inference and impression. Maybe just because this could work for gameplay, and there's some kind of a way you could look at it historically.
They at least try and make very sophisticated and educated guesses, I suppose.
Typically, you could probably say it. Now, again, there are some things that don't really have any evidence backing them. They go with it anyways. As I said, Celtic two-handed swordsman. There's no evidence for it really, and they say that it's like extremely unlikely to have been a thing. You know, but the sort of justification is some archaeological finds suggest some swords that were maybe a little longer than normal. Now, those more likely could have just been some sort of cavalry swords or something. But it's one of those, like, if you squint hard enough and you want to be particularly inventive, you could run with this idea, albeit, yes, very fanciful, that it's a two-handed sword that some selected elite people had. But again, that's like one of those if you really, really squint hard enough and go, that might be a fun idea with this very, very, very weak and tenuous justification.
Alright then.
And they admit, that wouldn't, but anyways. That's really the end of it. This is a short video. Hope you liked it, and I'll make a dedicated video probably discussing things like this, but yeah, thanks for watching.
Be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you all very soon.